99%. That is not a number I use lightly. But after 12 years of clinical practice and thousands of conversations with men over 60, I have come to recognize a single daily mistake so common, so quietly destructive, and so completely correctable that it deserves to be named directly. And the reason most men never fix it is not because they lack discipline. It is because nobody has ever told them it was a problem. I'm Dr. Emily Carter, a board-certified urologist with over 12 years of experience helping men over 60 reclaim their physical performance, their hormonal health, and the energy they were told was simply gone for good. And I want to challenge something you may have been told, that the performance decline most men experience after 60 is inevitable, irreversible, and something to be managed rather than addressed. In my clinical experience and in the research I follow closely, that belief is far more negotiable than most men realize. Today, I am going to tell you exactly what this mistake is, why it is destroying your performance at a biological level, and precisely what to do to correct it. And I think by the end of this video, you will recognize yourself in this conversation, and more importantly, you will know what to do about it. Before we go further, I want you to drop a comment below and tell me one thing you've accepted about your performance or your energy after 60 that you're not entirely sure you should have accepted. I read these, they matter to me. And now let's get into what's actually going on. The mistake is this: you are not eating enough protein, and you are almost certainly not eating it at the right times. That's it. No exotic explanation, no rare condition. A daily nutritional pattern that the vast majority of men over 60 have fallen into. Quietly, gradually, often while believing they were making responsible choices. That is systematically working against everything their body needs to maintain muscle, support testosterone, sustain energy, and perform at a level that feels like themselves. Let me show you what is happening inside your body right now if this describes you. After 60, your body's ability to synthesize muscle protein in response to dietary protein, a process called muscle protein synthesis, becomes significantly less sensitive. Researchers call this anabolic resistance. It means your muscles require more protein stimulus to produce the same response they once generated easily. At the same time, the rate of muscle protein breakdown continues unimpeded. The result is a net negative balance. Your body is breaking down more muscle than it is building, day after day, and most men are feeding that process with a dietary pattern that was already insufficient and is now catastrophically mismatched with their physiology. The average man over 60, in my clinical experience, consumes somewhere between 50 and 70 grams of protein per day. Current research on older adults suggests that optimal muscle preservation requires closer to 1.2 to 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day, which for a 180-pound man translates to roughly 98 to 130 grams. The gap between what most men are eating and what their biology actually requires is enormous, and it is not a gap they created through laziness. It is a gap created by outdated dietary guidelines, misplaced fear of certain foods, and a cultural narrative about aging that told them to expect less rather than demand more from their nutrition. But here is where the mistake goes deeper than total quantity. Because even among men who are eating reasonable amounts of protein, most are making a critical distribution error that undermines the entire effort. They are eating very little protein at breakfast, a modest amount at lunch, and then concentrating the majority of their daily intake at dinner. This pattern feels normal. It mirrors how most people eat, and it is, from a muscle biology standpoint, almost exactly wrong. Muscle protein synthesis is not a cumulative process that tallies up your intake at the end of the day and responds accordingly. It is an acute response triggered by leucine, a specific branched-chain amino acid, reaching a threshold concentration in your bloodstream. When leucine crosses that threshold, it activates a signaling pathway called mTORC1, which initiates the machinery of muscle protein synthesis. When leucine stays below that threshold, that machinery does not activate, regardless of how much protein you consume later. A breakfast of toast and coffee followed by a small salad at lunch means that for the first 8 to 10 hours of your day, your muscles have received no meaningful synthesis stimulus, and your body, faced with a protein deficit, has been drawing on your existing muscle tissue to meet its amino acid needs instead. This is the daily mistake. This is what 99% of men over 60 are doing without realizing it. And this is why the decline feels so gradual and so total, because it is happening at every meal, every day, in a direction that compounds over months and years. Now I want to tell you what happens at the hormonal level, because this is where the conversation becomes particularly relevant for men who are experiencing more than just physical changes. Muscle mass and testosterone exist in a bidirectional relationship. Testosterone supports muscle protein synthesis. It is one of the primary anabolic hormones governing muscle maintenance in men. But the relationship runs in the other direction as well. Men with greater muscle mass tend to have more favorable hormonal environments. Sarcopenia, the progressive loss of muscle mass, is associated with declining testosterone, increasing estrogen dominance through the activity of aromatase in adipose tissue, and a general hormonal shift that amplifies every symptom men associate with aging: fatigue, reduced libido, mood changes, cognitive dulling, declining drive. When you correct the protein mistake, you are not just feeding your muscles. You are intervening in a hormonal cascade that affects how you feel, how you think, and how you move through the world. I want to be precise here because precision is what separates genuine medical guidance from empty promises. Correcting your protein intake will not fully reverse low testosterone if the underlying cause is primarily gonadal. It will not replace clinically indicated hormone therapy if that is appropriate for your situation. But what it will do, and what the evidence consistently supports, is remove a major nutritional barrier that is actively suppressing your body's best possible hormonal function. You are not adding fuel to a fire that no longer exists. You are removing a wet blanket that has been smothering a fire that is still burning. Let me tell you about a patient I'll call James. James came to see me at 63. He was a disciplined man. He exercised, he watched what he ate, he took his health seriously. But he had watched his body change in ways that confused and frustrated him. His strength had declined despite consistent training. His energy was unreliable. His body composition had shifted, more fat, less muscle, even though his weight had barely changed. He felt, in his own words, like he was doing everything right and getting results that didn't match the effort. When I reviewed his nutrition, the pattern was immediately clear. His breakfast was fruit and yogurt, about 12 grams of protein. His lunch was a salad with some grilled chicken, about 25 grams. His dinner was substantial: steak, vegetables, sometimes a protein shake, about 70 grams. Total, reasonable on paper. Distribution, entirely wrong. We restructured his eating. We front-loaded his protein. We made sure every meal crossed the leucine threshold. We targeted 40 grams of high-quality protein at breakfast, 40 at lunch, and 40 at dinner. Over the following 3 months, and I want to be honest about timelines, 3 months, not 3 weeks, his body composition began to change in ways his training alone had never produced. His strength numbers improved, his energy stabilized. He told me at a follow-up that he felt like his effort was finally being matched by a result. That is what correcting this mistake can do. Not a miracle, a genuine, evidence-backed return of something real. Here is your action plan. Starting tomorrow, I want you to restructure your protein intake around 3 principles. First, total quantity. If you weigh 180 pounds, target a minimum of 120 grams of protein per day. If you are physically active, move toward the higher end of that range. Second, distribution. Divide that intake as evenly as possible across 3 meals. Do not let any meal fall below 30 to 40 grams. Your breakfast matters as much as your dinner, possibly more, because it ends the overnight fast and determines whether your body spends the first half of the day in a muscle-building or muscle-breaking state. Third, quality. Prioritize protein sources with high leucine content and strong bioavailability. Eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, chicken, fish, lean beef, whey protein if needed. These are not exotic interventions. They are foods that have always been available to you. What changes is the intentionality with which you use them. Track your intake for 2 weeks. Not forever, just long enough to understand where you actually are versus where you think you are. Most men are genuinely surprised by the gap. Gentlemen, I want to say something directly to the men watching this who have been working hard, eating what they believed was enough, and watching their performance decline anyway. You were not failing. You were working within a framework that was not built for your biology. The research on protein requirements in older men has evolved significantly in the last decade, and most of that evolution has not reached the general public. Your body has more capacity than you've been told, but it needs the right inputs to express that capacity. The machinery is still there. The pathways are still functional. What changes is the threshold, and now you know where the threshold is. If there is a man in your life who has given up on his strength, his energy, his physical performance, share this video with him, because the mistake is correctable, and giving up is not the only option available to him. I'm Dr. Emily Carter. The evidence is clear. For men over 60, protein is not just a macronutrient. It is a direct intervention in the biology of aging, and eating enough of it, distributed correctly across every meal of your day, may be the single most impactful nutritional change you can make right now. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.